Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. And now, here are Bob and Richard.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Gambling with an Edge. I'm Bob Dancer.
And I'm Richard Munchkin.
Our guest today is a repeat visitor from last week, slot consultant Buddy Frank. We're taping this after day 2 of G2E, which is the biggest gaming industry show of the year. It's held in Las Vegas, and our theme today is what did we like or dislike about G2E? Buddy Frank, welcome to Gambling with an Edge.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Richard.
As usual in video poker, IGT reigns supreme. The biggest news this year was not a game, but a box, or rather a bar top machine. We're going to talk about 3 different boxes that were done, and I promise you the third one will scare you, or at least scare some of the members of our audience. First one is out by IGT. This had a curved glass so that it convex, it curves upward so that you can see, like on triple play, you can see the top line more easily. I found this more gimmicky than actually useful. The screens are small enough that I've found the flat screen in the past to be satisfactory, but this was kind of nice. It's a little bit raised, somewhere between almost a quarter of an inch, so that if they spill drinks on the surface of the bar, it will not seep into the mechanical stuff of the machine itself. They have a spill tray they can open up. They actually can pull out the spill tray, clean it out easily, and put it back in so that spills, which will happen, won't affect the machine. If you drop a drink right on top of the machine, yeah, it'll still get in. All of the machines now seem to have USB ports in case you want to plug in your iPhone. Some of them even they're specifically made for cell phones, so you can lay your cell phone on top and it will charge your cell phone without physically plugging it in. They have that feature. They have it already installed on IGT machines, and aftermarket it's available on the other brands, of a light that turns on when you've had enough to drink or enough to play that the bartender is justified to give you a free drink. Each casino is going to set that with their own parameters, and there wouldn't surprise me we have some drink hustlers out there who are disappointed in this, but that's the least of what to be disappointed about this time.
So that's going to be true out on the floor for every machine out there, not just at the bars?
These were set for the ones at the bars. The light was in the back, so where a bartender could see it, but the players can't see it unless you can see the back of the machines that are at an angle to you.
Right. I'm wondering now if this is something cocktail waitresses are going to have to be aware of, where they're only going to bring drinks to people who have the light on.
Richard, I don't think so. There's been several of the major tracking systems that have a bar feature where you can order a cocktail through the machine, but we've never set those up to see if your limit is high enough to deserve that cocktail on the slot floor. Bars have always been a different issue with bartenders. So that bar button, you guys probably patronize Golden Gaming, which is the largest single purchaser of bar top poker machines in the world. I think they have 9,000 units. They developed their own little button like that themselves years ago to alert them, because their bar arrangements, when someone reaches whatever the operation wants is for a bar drink. But this is the first time it's been available to regular customers. Correct one little thing Bob said. He said it was first. IGT's always first in poker, but their bar top isn't out yet. The first new one out is actually from Aristocrat, and we'll talk about that. But one other thing, it's hard to imagine what that curve looks like. We said it curves up, but it's horizontally. It curves up, not vertically. So like a landscape photo, and then curved up towards you.
And one of the nice things about it for players who get W2Gs is the reset button is on the side of the top and side of the machine, not between the player's legs. Where normally if you get a W2G, you either have to a floor person who's really friendly or you have to stand up.
You know, this is so great. Sometimes these things take 30 years to figure out, but it's like a no-brainer, Bob. Why would you want to disturb the guest? And what he means now is the bartender or another tenant could do that quite easily, not causing a thing. Interesting point on the IGT thing. When they want to drop the box, they still have to have you get up, remove the door, and do it. On the new Aristocrat model, they can remove that cash box straight up the top, so you wouldn't necessarily have to get up. They would just come to the side of you, replace it, and put a new one in.
I'm still guessing you're going to have to get up. They're going to be
security people get
the
nervous.
hard count crew is going to roll through with a team of 5 or 8 or 10 people, and you'll clear off a whole area and do it. So I think that procedure is so embedded that will continue.
For years, we've always worked on good guest service with all our guests, but probably the last person to get those lessons is the drop crew in the morning.
Yeah, it's like those of us who play graveyard, we see drop crews every night. There are people who just play, who are silly enough just to play when the sun's out, then you never get to see the drop crew. All right, you've been talking about the Aristocrat machine. How is that different?
Well, one, it has a flat screen, a traditional flat screen. It's bigger than the base IGTs before, not as big as this new curved one, but it's a little bit bigger. The only reason anyone's talking about it, because you got to go, why is it better than IGT, which is the leader, both in their old Game King in what they call the G20 bar top now, or this new one? It isn't better because it's the same poker games, plays the same speed, everything else. But guess what it has? It has a better selection of video games. And your audience may say, who likes video games? We like poker. But the truth is, a Buffalo video game is one of the arguably most popular games of all time, and a lot of people play it in pennies and nickels. And Buffalo, the most popular game, will be on that new Aristocrat bar top. I've heard some operators, not all, but a few, say they're not going to put poker on those machines. They're just going to do Buffalo. We'll have to see how that plays out. I think that would be tough because you're going to have a lot of customers demanding poker at bars. But there's no argument that even some poker players like Buffalo.
Yeah, it doesn't cost them anything to add more games, right?
No, in fact, I have an infinite number of games. It just gets harder to set up, but the operators choose which games they want to put on the floor. Like a big contrast for me, thanks for knowing Bob for years, I learned my first game that I learned well through his books was Jacks Are Better. It's hard to find Jacks Are Better here in Las Vegas. In Reno, I find it on everything because this town has a lot more bonus-type games, I found, and a lot of places don't have Jacks Are Better. That's an individual operator preference. They can put whatever games they want on there. And it used to be those tabs that said Keno were pretty popular because there's a lot of Kenos and some good new ones, Caveman and other Kenos. But you went to the slot section, it was games you never heard of or didn't like. You know, they just weren't that good. But now they have Buffalo, and when we talk about Bally, you'll see 88 Fortunes, one of their top games. And even IGT, if you looked on, I bet you never went to the slot tab, Bob. You probably stayed with the poker.
You'd win that bet.
But on the slot tab, they had Cleopatra, which is pretty popular, and a couple of their popular titles. So everybody's leaning. They actually added roulette last year, which was big for them. They always had blackjack, not a particularly good version, but blackjack. So those are operator settings. But IGT. One other thing he mentioned about spills, I did notice the IGT had a small recess right up front where the bill validator was. And it almost looked like the perfect place to pour a milkshake if you were mad at the game. But he showed me inside, those all go down into a central basin that funnel down into a jar. But I'm surprised that was recessed, not raised, so liquids would run off instead of down into the machine. But it's IGT. It's going to be popular.
Now we talk about scientific games. Scientific games merged with Williams, which became WMS. It's also merged with Bally. So it's all of those together. The game looks pretty much like the IGT game. there is a big difference that I did not notice when I looked at it. Buddy called me up and said, "Did you see blah, blah, blah?" And I go, "No." He goes, "I'm going to go show you. And this is the part that's going to scare Richard." So, Buddy, since you found it before I did, you want to tell us about it?
Well, you got to remember, I come from a different perspective than you guys. But one of the challenges for us is identifying players. We like to do that. So if you use your card, we can give you all kinds of great rewards. But we've never known anything about all the uncarded players. And why do I want to know it? Well, remember I told you about some casinos have one poker and some another? I can track what's going on with players and see what they play. But in a lot of casinos, there's a high percentage of what we call untracked play. So I don't know whether a typical average casino may be 60% carded, 40% uncarded. So 40% of my win, I have no idea if it's one player or 5,000 players. I just know they make 40% of the win. So over time, people have tried to figure out ways to do that. And the method they chose was to put it, one of the methods for the future was to put a camera up there. Now, Bob is really good at looking at cabinets and stuff, and he didn't even see it. It's very small.
It has an SG logo on it, so it looks like just a brand name for scientific games. But if you take a picture of it and blow up that picture, you will definitely see that there's a lens there.
Yeah, and they're using Amazon Web Service to do some of their analysis of it. They'll also do a rough approximation of who you are, really rough. White male, I may say that, and it may put you in an age grouping, 50 to 70, as opposed to millennial, and that lets them analyze the play of that game a little bit better. Now, we see Richard over there palpitating at the heart, going, "Oh my God, they're tracking me." Well, they can.
Yeah, I mean, the table games have always done this without the technology. The floor supervisor will write down,
wearing a brown jacket.
Yeah, extremely good looking.
That's what they write down for me all the time.
Looks 30. And,
that too, yeah. So far, spot on.
And blue hat, so.
Don't wear hats.
But, so, I get it. I get it. Now, is this something that's going to be tied into facial recognition?
Well, it is facial recognition. And what it will do, if you don't have a card in, then we don't tie that face to anybody. But if you have a card in, then we probably will tie it into you. And therefore, if you came back again and didn't use your card, we might be able to see you. Which in a lot of ways is going to help the players, because a lot of our players complain when they get their tax statement, "I lost this much and I played this day and everything else." I'm assuming they're all honest. Well, now we'll have the ability to help them because that's true. If they weren't honest, that may work in their disfavor.
A number of our listeners play on more than one card. I do not recommend that policy, but I do know people who would play on 30 cards. And it would not take don't require a very good player recognition system to figure out that somebody using 30 different cards while being the same person was
especially the
probably
idiots.
Not something the casino wanted to do.
Especially the idiots who go sit at the same machine and just pull one card out and put the next card in over and over and over. But
you think that's a little obvious?
Yeah, well,
though, I got to say, you said the casino may not like it. I don't know if we'd be bothered by that at all. IRS might be bothered by that for various reasons, but in a way, you're kind of cheating yourself because we give higher values and at a more accelerated rate if your card has a lot. And when you have all different cards, from the casino perspective, we don't give out nearly as many rewards. Now, I could see why you might want to do it for other reasons, but from the casino perspective...
But if I put $1,000 through the machine... or I put $30,000 through the machine, you're not going to give me 30 times the mailer on my one card.
No, but I'm liable to put you in a category that earns you double points or triple points or something like that. I may invite you to events that $1,000 player would never dream of seeing, and your room may be a little bit better than the room you won't get at the other level.
But you'll get more cash from playing 30 times 1,000 than you will get 1 times 30,000.
Possibly.
Yeah. Now, the other problem, though, is...
And you'll get 30 invites to the low-end party.
Which you're not going to go to anyway.
Yeah. Once this gets tied into facial recognition in a big way, then the problem is if you've been 86th from the property, you're not going to be able to go back and play. Like right now, there are lots of people who've been 86th. Maybe they used to be card counters playing blackjack, but now they go play slots, right? And they don't have any problem. But, the day is coming where they will put a card into them, even without a card. They'll just walk up to a machine. The machine will read the face and go, that guy's been 86th in the past.
I'm smiling because obviously we have a totally different perspective. If we've 86 someone because he is fighting and causing a disturbance and ripping up stuff and destroying slot machines, smashing them, I want him out of there.
Sure.
I can see your point. If you ran him out because he's a card counter and advantage player, I could see where you would be upset. So,
I'm
you're
not
right.
even upset.
You're right.
Because to me, that is just part of the business. And, we have the obligation to continue to adapt. And things are always going to change. And it's just going to make it that much more difficult, going forward in the future.
But Bob and I have always had this interesting argument. Every once in a while, a slot machine malfunctions and pays more than it should. And Bob thinks that's a wonderful condition of nature. I'm thinking, oh my God, what happened? So it depends on your perspective.
Yeah, sure.
And there are laws in Nevada helped put in there by the casinos to, if a player knowingly takes advantage of this, the player is liable for significant penalties. Now, there's proving it and all kinds of things, but many of those kind of situations, I would not touch with a 10-foot pole because it's too easy because I'm too identifiable. Not so long ago, and outside of town, there were machines paying off too much for straights, and a whole bunch of players came in and took advantage of it for quite some time until eventually that went away, and they were definitely not using their card, and they definitely took precautions, but they forgot to call me on that because they thought I might be too well known.
I mentioned to you both that UNLV is doing a seminar coming up soon with a legal advisor, Anthony Cabot, they're going to be talking about the issue of privacy, legal issues related to having your image captures and stuff like that. Most of those seminars are open to the public. It'd be good for someone to sit in and see those issues because our industry is very concerned about privacy laws. Sometimes we're very confused about those. Many systems have you capture the driver's license thing. That's a great advantage for us because it has your photo on there, and when you cash a check, we can make sure it's you. That's a plus. But many other laws says you can't store that data. You can't store the driver's license because of privacy laws and things. So it's a tough road when we try to figure out.
Where is that you can't store that data?
It's almost a federal thing that you can't keep those images online without the guest permission. So we do it. The other thing is there's a law within FinCEN for those Title IX kinds, Title 31 kinds of transactions about money laundering, everything. They say we're required to know our player. And you must do that. If you don't do that, you'll be fined heavily. So how do I find out about you, Richard? Well, one is I could run your credit report. Oh, that's illegal unless I get your permission, so I can't run that. So we have to do silly things like look you up on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. Any self-respecting, really bad guy is not going to say, I'm a bad guy, I work for the mob, I'm part of the Sinaloa cartel on his Facebook page. So it's kind of ridiculous, but if you don't do those basic searches, you'll be fined. So, I mean, these are tough for us to enforce, and we don't want to invade the privacy of our guests, but we're required. If you don't do at least some due diligence on source of funds, we get fined.
That's for big players.
Yeah, anyone gambling a significant amount, they say you better know where you come and know a source of funds. It's almost possible to find that out unless the guests volunteer it. And some of our statements we have to file behind the scenes say, we heard he made his money selling toothpicks at a hot dog festival. Hearsay you sometimes put down, but at least shows you tried your best, You can
make a lot of money that way.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one game I saw in the IGT booth, put out by videopoker.com, is called Stack 'em High. This is a triple play or 5-play game, and the bonus is triggered by being dealt 2 or 3 aces and only holding those 2 or 3 aces. You get additional hands, partly depending on whether you're playing triple play or 5-play, partly depending on if on bonus poker where 4 aces pay 400, you're going to get a lot more hands than you will on triple double bonus where 4 aces pay either 800 or 4,000. But each of the bonus hands start with the 2 or 3 aces that you get, and then including all 3 or all 5 starting hands and the bonus hand, it goes up 1 hand at a time. If you get an ace, it sticks, and you keep going higher and higher and higher. So if you you can end up with, if you start with 3 and end up with 4th, you can get a lot of 4 aces and the bonuses. It is it adds about a 0.25%. The strategy is not changed on the machine other than a very, very few cases. In triple double bonus, if you are dealt ace, ace, ace for 5, the right hold is ace, 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 4. If you hold ace, 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 4, you will not get the bonuses. If you hold ace, 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 you will. It is always right to hold the ace, ace, ace. If you, even on a hand like ace, ace, 5, 5, 5, it is right to hold the pair of aces and throw away the 3 5s. The time where it isn't correct, it's very rare, is if you're playing a deuces bonus or a deuces double bonus. There the trigger is 2 or 3 deuces. And if you're dealt what seems to be a full house of deuce, deuce, ace, 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 that counts as 5 aces in that game. 5 aces pay either 400 or 800 depending on whether you're playing deuces bonus or deuces double bonus, and the 2 deuces by themselves are worth around 300. 300 is a whole lot, but it's less than either 400 or 800. So other than those very few exceptions, you hold it and it plays itself. So for people who it's going to be highly volatile, it's going to depend on being dealt 2 or 3 of either the aces or deuces, depending on what you're playing.
I love hanging around with you because how few people would throw away a full house on a video poker machine. Not many, but it's the right play. So,
well, you're used to it. If it's ace, 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 5, 5. Players on double, double, or even double are used to just holding the aces. But if it's 2 aces and 3 5s, they're not so used to it. Mm-hmm. And it's different math whether it's 2 aces and 3 5s or 2 aces and 3 4s.
Bob, I apologize for not asking you earlier because I don't know, but there was a new version of Ultimate X on the floor. Did you get to see that?
Yes. Why don't I talk about Ultimate X Gold?
This is not a setup. I didn't know he knew about it, so.
This is an Ultimate X game where you do not get multipliers based on your final hand. you get multipliers by being dealt certain hands. So a pair of jacks will give you multipliers on a straight, a flush, and certain 4 of a kinds. A dealt 3 of a kind will give you multipliers on certain other things. The multipliers keep going up until you win them, or they reach 10x, which is where they stop until you win it. So every time you get a multiplier, you get to play it off. So, which is unlike regular Ultimate X, where frequently you'll get a 12x on the third spot, and then on the next hand, you got nothing on that third spot, and so you miss the multiplier. One of the problems with this game is the strategy is going to change drastically. If you have no multipliers, which means 1x, and you get 30 coins for a flush, you compare that with 2x multipliers, so you get 60 coins for a flush. There's a lot of hands that are played differently if you get 60 coins for a flush than 30. Like you're going to hold ace, king, 5 of hearts, whereas with 30 you would hold ace, king. And so as there's thousands of combinations of different levels of multipliers at the various levels, strikes me as a very complicated game to master. But every year they have a new Ultimate X game, and that's what they have this year.
That was a preview, and one thing I've said in the past, I love your software because I can go out and play the games. The only problem is these brand new games aren't in the software, but that's kind of nice where videopoker.com comes in, because once they release these games, and I don't know the release dates on these two we've talked about. Once they release, they're usually on videopoker.com where you can look at them and play them.
You can play them, but the strategy isn't there.
Exactly.
The correction isn't there. There is a way around that for a few games, which we'll talk about in the commercial section. Just happens that videopoker.com is one of our sponsors. And so there's a pro membership where Gambling with an Edge listeners will get a special deal on it. There were 2 other games that happened to be games they had released before, but they were wheel poker versions of Wheel Poker Progressive and Super Times Pay with wheels. What made these different was it is a curved glass, so it is a tall game. So it's going to be much more expensive for the casino to put in. But when you get the wheel in the game switch positions, and you can physically move the wheel in the same way that you can move icons on your iPhone. So it's under the glass.
So it's a touch screen, and
it is a touch screen, but you can.
It looks like you're controlling the wheel,
and so it feels like you have more control over exactly where the wheel goes and stuff like that. My guess is you don't, but it definitely feels that way.
One other quick comment, because we talked about boxes earlier, and we just stayed within the category of bar tops. IGT also has a new slant poker that they showed at the show. It's on their platform called the Crystal Duel. It has 2 nice screens. The funny thing both about the bar top, the new bar top replacing the G2E, a lot of people aren't going to do it because the old ones still just work great. And the biggest implement to IGT selling new games is their old games work so good. As long as you've updated the screens with an LED, keep your buttons clean. You can actually, with some of the older ones, update the motherboard so you can run all the newer programs. IGT's biggest competitor is IGT. But they did have a new Crystal Duel Slant Poker, which looked really, really nice. How is it really different? It's not same games we're all used to and everything else, but it's a little brighter, clearer, crisper, and everything seems to work better when they're new until they get, broken in a while. But so a new base cabinet from IGT, and the new bar top. I did one difference. At first glance, that one from Scientific Games and the one from IGT look identical. They're not. IGT's a little wider. Scientific Games puts some of the mechanicals, the card reader and stuff on the right side, where IGT takes all that space and puts those things down in front of you. So it's interesting. We did see one prototype from IGT. It doesn't affect Nevada people, but it's big with Indian tribes, called the Class 2. But I could tell this was a prototype because they use a touchscreen for the buttons. And I told the guy, "Are you really doing it?" And he went, "No. Poker players would never do that." This was a demo product, just a proof of concept. If they introduce this Class 2 poker, which Indian tribes like because they don't pay any taxes on it, they'll have traditional buttons.
And the particular game he's talking about, you can show it so that there's bingo cards off to the left side, but that's optional as to whether or not it's shown. When it is not shown, I could not tell the difference between the Class 2 machine and the regular machine, which is called Class 3. Those Class 2 and 3 come from the Johnson Act, maybe?
Actually, from the IGRA Act of 1988, the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. We call it IGRA. That's where it was specified, the different classes.
But Class 3 is what you find in a regular casino, and Class 2. Some casinos can have Class 2 or Class 3, some Indian casinos. But here you cannot tell the difference. Usually Class 2, you can tell the difference. They're, I would say, off-brand, or they just look different. This is IGT.
At the spring show that Bob and I went to, it's called the NIGA show. It's the Indian Gaming Show in San Diego. I showed him a bingo provider who had a Class 2 game that played the identical thing. Obviously, it's different. It goes on those video screens in Bingo Hall, but it was one prototype, too, of a Class 2. By the way, someone may say, what's a Class 1? That's just historical, cultural games that Indians play among themselves. Class 2 essentially are bingo-based games. Class 3, everybody in Nevada knows what that is. That's regular gambling.
All right. So we're going to take a brief commercial break, and then we're going to be back talking to Buddy Frank about what we liked about G2E. The South Point has more than 10,000 games, returning more than 99%. This is more than anyone else has. In November, the promotion deals with Amazon gift cards. Play coin-in that is usually generates $25 of cash or free play, namely $8,334, and you can redeem that for a $50 Amazon gift card. Limit 10 cards per person for the month. All points must be earned and redeemed in November. The Bob Dancer free video poker classes are over for this semester. We will start again in January. At predictit.org, there's a market where you can place small bets on the occurrence of various political events, mostly but not entirely in the United States. On our last show, I indicate that I would sign up and deposit money before this show. It turned out this time I had allocated to do that, the site was down for maintenance. So I have not done that yet, but I still plan to do it and put in my $20 and get the $20 matching fees for its predicted matching bonus, which is predictit.org/promo/edge, and I'll cash it out. I'll try to sell it midway through and cash it out and do various other things, basically to get familiarity with what it works. I tend to be a political junkie. This actually sounds like a kind of exciting site to hang out with. Videopoker.com. It's the best place to play lots of games. If you sign up for the Gold membership, $8.95 a month or $79.95 a year, it allows you to get correction on most of the games. There's currently what they call Pro membership. You can get it for an additional $3 a month over the Gold membership, which allows you to get all the Gold membership benefits plus Pro membership. But most of our listeners would more likely do the Pro membership by itself. which would be $6.95 a month or $49.95 a year. What this does is 2 popular games which you do not normally get correction are, which would be Quick Quads and all the pay schedules for the regular Ultimate X on 3-play and 5-play versions. You can get correction on it. You can enter in any hand and with any sum of multipliers, and it will tell you what the correct play is by how much. Those of you who play either of these games for money that you consider significant, I strongly recommend you get this product. If you sign up with at videopoker.com/GWAE for gambling with an edge, you'll get 1,000 free hands, which is enough for you to try all the features and see if it's something that you want to go for or not. All right, we are back with Buddy Frank.
Hey, I wanted to ask you a question, Bob.
Sure.
I had a commitment last night and with some gaming investors and couldn't attend it. Otherwise, I would have been there. But you went to the Gaming Hall of Fame dinner, and one of my heroes was one of the inductees. I think it's well worth telling your audience about him and some background.
You're talking about Ernie Moody.
Ernie Moody.
All right. Now, I will, and I was actually going to be talking about Ernie during the recommended section, where at the end of every show, Richard or I recommend something that we've just heard about recently. So I was going to talk about the Ernie Moody under my recommended section. So I can talk about it now because Buddy so rudely makes me do it. But that will mean that I will have no recommended situation later, and Richard's on his own in that department. Ernie Moody happens to be the owner of Action Gaming, videopoker.com, which makes him a sponsor, and we're really grateful for his sponsorship. He invented the game Triple Play, along with hundreds of follow-up games such as 100 Play, Spin Poker, Super Times Pay, Quick Quads, Ultimate X, many others. At the industry presentation, the presentation was geared towards how much money these games made for the casino. For our audience, we look at it somewhat differently. The reason the games were really popular is because they were more fun to play. So players played more and casinos brought them in more. For the strong players, the games provide opportunity. When the game has positive EV, including promotions, you can get a lot more coin in on multi-line games than you can get on single-line games. Playing, for example, $5 play instead of $5 single line, it has less than half the variance. So it's the same dollar amount, but it's less than half the variance. And variance is something that kills a lot of gamblers. So I suppose ruins a lot of gamblers would be more correct saying it. So another feature that about these machines is the math worked differently on these games. Early on, there was a casino with a promotion of for $25 or higher, you would get a drawing ticket. So somebody came when they had dollar triple play. They were dealt a pair of jacks, and you could get $5 for one pair of jacks, $5 for the next. And if the next one was 3 of a kind on one of the 3 lines, that came up to $25. Or if it was a jacks or better game, it could be dealt 2 pair or jacks or better, 2 pair and 2 pair. So you were getting a lot more of these drawing tickets than the casino had allocated. There are hundreds of other examples how these games create opportunities. When there are so many games out there and new ones happening all the time, the smartest players are much brighter than the average marketing department people. And so they'll come up with new promotions that sound good, and then we come in and clean their clock. So a lot of this has to do with all these new games that are invented, and for that we have Ernie Moody to thank.
I want to talk about that too, because those games were brilliant for me, and I've in my career often hired Bob to help me understand poker better, but also to teach my customers how to play poker better. But from the casino perspective, when triple play poker first came out, I got the overall stats. In the early days, we couldn't see the individuals players' particular win-loss. We could see their win-loss, but not all the details of how they played. Now we can. But I noticed that I held more. If I had a 99-5-4 a jacks or better in a regular cabinet, the average player might play that at 97. But when that same average player was playing triple play, he didn't play it as well. I might have had a 96% payback. He was not playing the game as well. And I hired him to tell me why. Now, skilled players can still take advantage of it, but why do you think average triple play players didn't play that game as smart as they did single hand poker?
Well, they just changed the strategy. The jacks or better strategy, whether it's on single line or triple play, is 100% identical. And there are plays that they cannot stand to make 3 times. Not so much in jacks or better, but if you're playing double bonus and you're dealt 3 aces and 2 5s, the right play in most double bonus games is just to hold the 3 aces and throw away the 2 5s. But you have to throw away 10 full houses if you're playing 10 play. And some players cannot bring themselves to do that. Now, on the games that Buddy mentioned, players don't play quite that bad. He was saying players were making an average of 2.5% mistakes on average in jacks or better, and that is just not true. On the good games, the average is much higher, partly because much of the coin in is done by smart players. And also, if players are going to learn any game, it's going to be jacks or better, because that's the game that all the teachers start with. And so bad players are definitely going to hold less. If you start off with an 8-5 jacks or better, which starts out as 97.3, then you might have more than 2% errors, because nobody with a clue would be playing that game. And so you're going to find a lot of mistakes. But on 9-6 jacks or better, I find it really hard to believe that the average would be 2.5% errors.
You know, Bob, it depended a lot for me on properties. I think you and I first met. I was a slot director at Fitzgerald's in downtown Reno. It was kind of sandwiched in between the tourist things, and we had a lot of what we call free and independent travelers, not a lot of serious, knowledgeable gamblers. Again, we were right in the middle of downtown, so it was a great place to stay, but it was a lot of visitors from Canada and San Francisco. And then after that, I moved to a place that, I spent a little time at the El Dorado, but went out to a place called the Atlantis. They had very loose products. All the players were very good. So I found at the Atlantis, they were playing not optimum, but pretty close to it. And at Fitzgerald's, I did have almost 2%, I think because I had such a casual. It also... There was no books much. There were not many books when I started my career, so people were kind of on their own to figure that out. And I found that more than half of America's math adverse, so they weren't doing it on their own. When all of a sudden you got great books, you got great software and stuff, all players got better.
The same thing happened in blackjack. 35 years ago, they figured that the average blackjack player was playing at like minus 2%. And now if on a 3-2 game, they feel like the average player is playing at less than 1%. So the public has become more educated over time, and the whole general level has gotten better.
Does that make sense with my comments?
Yes, and I actually, the first time I remember meeting you was when you were at the Atlantis, and I was actually giving a seminar at UNR. So if I met you when you were at Fitzgerald, you made no lasting impression on me whatsoever, buddy. And,
Vice versa.
And I don't remember that at all. But what you say, it just might be true. All right, so outside of video poker, buddy, did you see anything at the show that might be of interest to smart players?
I'm going to turn this one to Richard in a way. Shuffle Master is the leading provider of card shufflers, and there's been a lot of controversy about those. They have a new shuffler out which did an interesting thing. It shuffled the cards like normal, but it rotated them, Richard. And maybe you can explain to our viewers why that was so important with what we call edge sorting in cards. And I found that very fascinating that they recognize that a problem, have a new shuffler that's going to rotate the cards. You may hate that, may like it.
Well, no, I mean, this is in response to the whole Phil Ivey thing. And,
Exactly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw the new shuffler that the Shark Trap, which I mean, there's this tremendous new shuffling machine coming out that is really going to put a dent in Shuffle Master's business. But just to talk about the table games, you know, there were a lot of new side bets, kind of the same thing as last year. Lots and lots of side bets on blackjack, on baccarat. There were a few new games, but again, there's no point in getting excited about any of them. I mean, you know, many of these things look like they could be exploitable, but you know, some tiny percentage of these games is actually going to see a casino, and who knows what the pay schedule is going to be when it gets there. So I really don't get excited by any of this anymore. So, but the big move is stuff based on Hold'em and stuff and side bets on blackjack.
There is a movement that's moving slow like an iceberg melting, but it is moving. And that's this world in the industry we call ETG, or electronic table games. They came out years ago and everybody said, this is the greatest fad, there's going to be a million of them. And it didn't happen that way. But they're slowly getting better. The games are getting better. The manufacturers are getting better. Shuffle Master was one of the first entrants into that thing. And their game virtually remained the same for 8 or 10 years. They had a brand new version out. Bigger screen, brighter, better looking. And we slowly see more casinos. Bob, when we were in the Scientific Games booth, we saw their bar top.
Yes.
One thing you may not have noticed was you can hook that bar top up to be a station on the blackjack game. Whether it's a live dealer or regular, it is a terminal on the blackjack game. So I think you're going to see some ET growth. It's moving very slowly, but it's happening.
Yeah, they've gone to these. They've gone to the stadium as kind of the interim step, right? They go to the stadium where you get the players. There is a dealer up there in front of you. You can put 60 players around that dealer or whatever, and you get the players acclimated to using the touch screens and putting the money in the machine and all that. And 10 years from now, you won't see a live dealer, I don't think.
It sounds like it could never happen here, but go on the internet, Google Macau, and you'll see those stadiums with those 200 players, and it's a phenomenal to watch.
Go to the Venetian and look at there's a baccarat pit there that, I think they have a bac and a blackjack and a roulette all in one stadium. And you can just you can go back and forth from game to game if you want. So,
one thing on the IGT bar top, they have roulette on the machine. And so I looked at it, and on the roulette area, you could choose between single zero or double zero roulette. So I go, you cannot possibly be putting both of these on the same box and letting players choose which one they want to do. And he goes, oh no, this is just to illustrate that we have them. But since we're here at the Venetian, we just might put in a 000 version.
Yeah, actually, I saw that there is one of these big roulette, electronic roulette machines now that had 000 there.
Bob, I got to tell you, I worked at one Indian casino where we had a single lot game, and we had multiple double lot games. And when that single lot would be open right next to the double lot, oftentimes I saw more people playing the double lot than the one. Remember my earlier comments that people didn't read books and software in the old days? Some people don't read any books about roulette because it is a substantial advantage to play a single lot over a double. And God hope none of you are playing triple lot.
Yeah, it's 2.7 or something for each additional lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
And good. What else did you see, buddy?
To me, it was a remarkably good show. Richard came in and said it wasn't such a good show, and I came in and said, what a great show. And because we have different perspectives.
Yeah, I have to say the other thing that I said this to you earlier, but I haven't said on the air. There was no game protection seminar, which, just is sort of astounding to me that there's nothing on game protection. So
yeah, sometimes they have a whole track just devoted to game protection.
Right.
But there are things. I pointed out that there's going to be a whole seminar tomorrow on facial recognition, which is a form of that. There's a company called eConnect, which does these facial things just on table games. So I think they've kind of morphed in what they call it, but there's still a lot of activity in that area, especially helping us be compliant with money laundering issues. The bottom line, everything's bigger. That's not new. The last 3 or 4 years, everything's bigger. The curved screen, everything's curved and bigger. More, I think they're beyond 4K now. So the clarity is amazing. Some of the button technology is very, very good. And then we all have our personal favorites. I wrote a story today. It'll probably appear in a day or two about a game I like called Zoltan. If you all remember the movie Big, where the fortune teller machine made a little kid go into Tom Hanks' body. It's based on that. But it happens to be on a game I love because a company called Multimedia, now Every, developed a 3-reel spin game that looked like an old Bally S6000. And when everybody else thought reels were dead, that game works incredibly well in casinos. Customers love it. It looks like a little smaller, scaled down S6000. Beautiful game. Dollar players like it, but it's got a big top box on it with lots of stuff. Well, they made Zoltan the top box, and it's pretty neat looking. So, personal favorite of mine, I liked it. Here's the big news. There was, as far as I know, Zoltan was the only new branded license in a casino. Why do I care about that? Why would your listeners care about that? When you go out and license James Bond for $30 million, who do you think's paying that?
Players.
Ultimately, the players. So the fact that there's no license brands, to me, one, I don't have to pay some of those high fees, but the players probably getting a little better return to the house because the operators don't have to pay those fees. So I'm kind of glad all the brands aren't out there. To me, they never added much to a gameplay. A good game is a good game is a good game, and that one. If you think about Buffalo, no brand. Lightning Lynx, no brand. Dragon Lynx, no brand. The new Dollar Storm, no brand. They worked really well, and they didn't need a big, highfalutin, expensive brand.
Also, lots and lots and lots of stuff about sports betting. Everybody's all over that, as you would expect. I mean... Oh, and the other thing, I went by the Gamblet booth with the skill games, and it looked pretty much all the same as last year. I mean, maybe there were a few newer ones in there, but just seemed like the same games they had last year. So.
We mentioned Ernie Moody. I got to meet another of my heroes at this show. Nolan Bushnell was there, and he's working with a company called Synergy Blue, who does skill-based games. I'm excited about them. I think they're several years away. They just haven't hit the market yet. By the way, their secondary business, sports betting is going crazy. And I don't know if you know, but New Jersey just passed Nevada in terms of wagering, which is phenomenal to me. But there's all this secondary stuff. I grabbed Bob by the hand and said, sit here. And I sat him down in a chair designed for sports betting. Was it nice?
It was a lovely chair.
Did it pop hot dogs up out of the...
It didn't have a vibrator on, and I'm not sure why they had it in a pink paisley, but it was a comfortable chair.
Because you got to remember, they sit there for hours watching the game or the horse races or whatever they're doing, so you got to keep them comfortable.
The one thing they did not have this year, which compared to most years, was tits and ass. Usually, they have playmates, branded playmates. They all these shows have these gorgeous ladies to
even Shufflemaster didn't seem to have the usual cleavage array that they normally do.
I'm going to use the politically correct term, spokesmodels.
Yes.
I commented this to Bob.
Oh, TNA, you don't approve of TNA, huh?
I still occasionally get employed by people who are politically correct, so I won't say. But I commented to Bob that there was a noticeable lack of spokesmodels among all the major U.S. vendors. But I also pointed out some of the foreign vendors who were smaller, offshore, Italy, Japan thing, they made up for it. So head to those booths if that's your attraction.
All right. So thank you, buddy. Richard, we have a few minutes left for you to tell us what you recommend this week. I've already spilled my beans, so you're on your own.
My recommendation this week is my favorite breakfast spot.
Uh-huh.
It's a place called Mary's Hash House. Not to be confused with the Hash House A-Go-Go's. This is Mary's Hash House.
Yes.
It is on Decatur, right near Sahara. They, as you might guess, they specialize in hash, all different kinds of hash, not just corned beef. And they also make their own jelly. So they come around with 6 or 8 or 10 different little cups of all different jelly that they make fresh. Everything from watermelon to jalapeno.
And you can taste them. You can taste them for free if you want to.
You can have as many as you want. Yeah, you can have all the different flavors of jelly that you like. So, anyway, yeah, that's my favorite breakfast spot. So
yes.
That's my recommendation for the week.
Very good. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, buddy. Go out and hit lots of royal flushes, everybody. Good day.